Higher Education Minister Nzimande says his department is aware of honorary doctorates awarded to some celebrities by the Trinity International Bible University. The department's records show that the institution is not registered as a private higher education provider. Nzimande joining us now for reaction on this particular story. Minister, good evening to you and thank you very much for your time. This institution is not authorized to offer any qualifications, including honorary degrees, and yet here they are, still doing it. This weekend, social media awash with pictures of some celebrities being awarded honorary doctorates. You've warned this institution before against doing this. What action are you going to take against them now?
Thanks very much, Tori. Good evening to you and good evening to your viewers and listeners. I must say that I'm very disappointed that this institution, the International Bible Trinity, continues offering honorary degrees, which it is not entitled to do because it's not a registered institution. Only registered and approved higher education institutions can actually do this. And I did engage with them before, by the way, when they had awarded to another celebrity an honorary doctorate, and said to them at the time, if they want to become an educational institution, there are procedures that they must follow. And I'm willing to help them to actually comply. They didn't take up that, and they actually continue to do this. But let me say this. I have no issue with the celebrities, and I have no issue with celebrities being given honorary doctorates, but they must be given by credible institutions. It's very unfortunate that this institution is doing this. Two actions that I'm taking. Already, by the way, I'm expecting any time now a full report from the Council of Higher Education on what action should we take on such institutions. The reason why we should actually be taking action is that the unfortunate part about such institutions doing this, they diminish the credibility of qualifications offered by our institutions, even honorary ones. They must be offered by genuinely legitimate and accredited institutions. Because if we allow this to happen, then South Africa is just going to be a pariah. No one will ever take seriously whatever qualifications that we actually give. That is why it's very important to do this. The second thing, I've also asked the Council for Higher Education to give me guidelines which are very clear. Who can offer honorary qualifications? Some of them are there already. And also, if you're given an honorary qualification, can you use it or not in your title? Because there are certain conditionalities. In some instances you can, but in other instances you actually cannot. I'm very disappointed about this. But also now I'm exploring even further action with the advice of the CHE of what serious action can we actually take against institutions who are essentially breaking the law. This institution is a bogus institution. It doesn't have the right to offer any degrees or any higher education qualifications, including honorary. Because even honorary qualifications or recognition, let me put it that way, must be offered by accredited institutions. So I will unfortunately have to take action. But I still reach out to them to say, can they come and sit down to me so that I can explain to them the horrible consequences that this is actually doing to the credibility of our higher education system.
Minister, the institution, when I say the institution, your department, pardon me.
Yes.
It says in the statement that you did warn this institution to regularize its operations. And this was some time ago. Firstly, how long ago was this done? But second of all, if they come back, and I'm using hypothetical language here, if they come back and say they rely on some international accreditation of sorts, in order to continue their operations. What will your response be?
Look, it's more than a year. In fact, it's possibly close to 2 years that they did this, and we invited them that we should actually come and sit down with them and told them that they are not allowed to. On the second issue, Paul, any internationally accredited institution must also be recognized by South Africa. We have got the South African Qualifications Authority. If Xoli Mngambi says that I've got a PhD from Columbia University, the South African Qualifications Authority is able to check that. If Xoli Mngambi says I've been awarded by a German accredited institution, the South African Qualifications Authority is able to check whether that institution is indeed existing and is indeed an accredited one. And therefore, if it is internationally accredited, it also has got to be recognized by our local authorities, qualifications authorities. And we are able to check that. It's easy. We do that all the time.
Yeah.
That's what the South African Qualifications Authority actually does. You can't then hide behind an international institution. Because that international institution, if it's not recognized in its own country, well, it may be recognized in its own country, but in terms of our own criteria, we do not recognize it here. It will still not be recognized, even if it can have some kind of international recognition. But also, the international system is fairly credible. Internationally recognized institutions are known, many of them, and we know that they actually offer credible degrees. We also then act on the basis of that. Let me say the last thing. UNESCO has also established what is now a common system for international recognition of qualifications and mutual recognition of qualifications and institutions. So no institution is going to gain international recognition if that is not recognized here in South Africa. Yeah. If it is not recognized here in South Africa, then if some international institutions recognize that, but in South Africa we feel that that is not recognized, and usually it would also not be recognized by other credible international institutions, we can't recognize them. That's why we urge this Bible college or institutions to desist from doing this. We now have to take action, unfortunately.
And you say in the statement, Minister, as we wrap up on this, you say that you have offered to engage with them. Have you had any receipt from their side to say, yes, indeed, we're willing to engage? Or if perhaps they haven't acknowledged your attempts to engage with them, is that a clear sign, therefore, that you're proceeding with action?
They haven't come back to us, though. We are more than willing to meet anyone and explain to them. The fact that this institution also continues to offer bogus, it's a bogus honorary doctorate this, to celebrities, it's because they want to try and sway the opinion of South Africans. That if such and such a celebrity has been awarded by this institution, it means this institution is credible. It does not work that way. I have no problem with celebrities. I have no problem with celebrities, as I've said, being recognized, but it must be done by credible institutions. You can't then, when you are a bogus institution, then award a celebrity because you hope that will change your nature being a bogus institution. This is unfortunately a bogus institution. And as Minister of Higher Education and Training, I have a huge responsibility to ensure that institutions that actually award degrees, including honorary degrees, must be accredited to do so. If I don't do that, by virtue of the fact, well, let me turn a blind eye because a celebrity has been honored, we are destroying our system. Your own qualification, only in future, won't be recognized by the rest of the world, because the rest of the world will say, South Africa actually has got bogus institutions. They end up not believing any of our qualifications. Yeah. That's the most dangerous thing we can do. By the way, apart from our sovereignty, one thing that we have as a country about our own credibility is the credibility of our qualifications, including honorary recognition.
Well, hopefully Many of the people that have received the award will take heed of this, Minister. Can I quickly sway the attention to NSFAS? And, of course, this entity has been in the news since the past week. I just have two questions here, Minister. The administrator has 12 months to turn the state of governance, including management of this entity, around. Is that enough time for him, you feel?
Well, we hope so. If it is not enough, I'm still allowed as a minister to extend the administrator's term by a further 12 months. The law allows me to do it 12 months at a time. We hope that by that 12 months a lot of progress would have been made.
Yeah.
Because some of the things that the administrator must do are very clear. Make sure that students are paid on time. Develop capacity to actually address all the shortfalls that are there. But more than anything else, what we have also identified now, Xoli, is that the NSFAS Act in itself requires a fundamental revision, including what it says how the boards should be composed. It's become clearer to me now that we have to do that, which means that the new administration, which comes in after May, must also then look into the legislation and see what is it that needs to be changed. I will already have recommended that we need to change. One of the things we have to change is not the only one, is the composition of the board. I mean, NSFAS is a 50 billion rands operation. We really need a particular caliber of people who must be on the board. As of now, it's become clear to me that it's actually not the case. But the most immediate thing is that I want the administrator to ensure that allowances are paid, the fees are paid, and so on. But let me also add this, Xoli, because sometimes you just look at NSFAS alone. The problem is often also not with NSFAS alone. Universities and colleges themselves sometimes are a problem.
Yeah.
I want to say this. They don't provide information on time. If a university doesn't provide information that Xoli Mngambi is a duly registered student who is studying this on time, NSFAS won't pay. And then the problem won't be with NSFAS. Of course, one of the things that I want the administrator now to do is to develop a system that will facilitate sharing of information between institutions, universities, colleges on the one hand, and NSFAS on the other hand.
All right.
That's another thing that is very, 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 very important. Sometimes, I don't take kindly to universities saying, blaming NSFAS only. Some of our universities do not provide information on time.
Yeah.
And therefore, one of the things I want the administrator to do is to develop an ICT system that will enable quick sharing of information at the press of a button, which will actually go a long way in solving these problems.
Minister, very briefly for me, I have less than a minute here, and I also need to release you because you have a meeting. I took particular interest in your initial response that NSFAS needs a fundamental revision. And then you focus the attention on the composition of the board. If you put that in simple language, what is fundamentally wrong with the manner in which the board has been composed over time?
Let me just mention one thing, Xoli. The one big weakness with what the law says about the composition of the board, it specifies some kind of individuals that must be on the board. It says, for instance, three students must be on the board. You must then have one person who has got this qualification. That's not usually how boards are constituted. Usually the way boards are constituted is that, like, I'm making an example. In an institution like NSFAS, you need a board that's going to be representative, collective, of people who understand the funding of students in post-school education and training collectively. Then as to who do you really then appoint must be guided by that, And that when you look at the board collective, it then represents the aspiration and the goals of the institution. But when you start saying you need 3 students, you need 1 lawyer, you need 1 accountant, and so on. Also in the process, by the way, you also may exclude through that legislation of other types of people that you need. For example, people with capacity to understand administration of such institutions and so on. So that we will actually have to seriously look at. Right. Maybe there was excitement when we set up the board some years back, 20, 30 years ago, but now we really need to look at, from experience that government has in setting up successfully functioning board, how do we actually constitute them? It may not be the only thing, the constitution of the board. We also need to look at the legislation whether actually it does provide for adequate means of accountability, whether also the board has got adequate instruments to be able to hold management to account. All those things will have to be looked at.
Understood. Thank you very much, Minister, for your time. Dr. Blade Nzimande, the Minister of Higher Education and Training. More news after the break.